I wanted to do a review of Charles Schwab's Robo-Advisor, which they call their Intelligent Portfolio. And so in this video, I'm going to kind of go over the basics of automated investing, which are also called Robo-Advisors, what they are, how much they cost generally, who offers them. And then after that, I'm going to do a review of Schwab's Intelligent Portfolio. I've been invested in a Schwab Intelligent Portfolio for a little over a year right now. And so I'm going to go over some of the pros and cons that I've learned about in that time. So to get started, I just wanted to do a brief introduction on what automated investing is. These are often called robo-advisors. So what they are these off-the-shelf products that a lot of the investment brokerages offer now. There's several different programs that you can go through, but essentially what it does is it automates the process of investing for you. So instead of you choosing certain ETFs or stocks to put in your portfolio, it creates a whole portfolio for you. So it does your asset allocation and your sort of ETF selection for you. And the way it determines this is at the very beginning, it generally will ask you a series of questions to gauge what your risk tolerance is. So off the bat, I would say if you're a more savvy investor, probably a robo-advisor is probably not for you because you probably want a little more control and you probably understand sort of what your own asset allocation and risk tolerance is. But for anyone who just wants to get started, actually automated investing is like very good because it's really just like a set it and forget it thing. You can automate recurring investments as well. So if you want to choose sort of how much you want to invest on a regular basis, they make it very simple. So off the bat, automated investing is really good for people who aren't that familiar with investing. It's a good way to just get exposure to multiple markets and multiple assets really quickly. And the other great thing that a lot of these automated investors do is they rebalance your portfolio for you. So I did a previous video about diversification, and in that I mentioned sort of how different asset classes perform differently over the years. And as that happens, your asset allocation will change over time. And what you want to do is move it back to your target allocations. And so these automated investors will do that for you. There is one thing to note about automated investors is that many of them have additional fees on top of the fees that the ETFs will charge you. So that will be usually a percentage of the total assets that you're putting in there. And it can be anywhere from 0.25% to 1%, generally speaking. And so one of the things I will say as a drawback in general for these automated investors is that they do charge an additional fee on top of the fees that you'll already be paying to the investment management companies that run the ETFs that you purchase. So it just means that, all you want to optimize for is your performance over the long term. And anytime you have a yearly management fee that you also have to pay on top of other fees, it's just going to eat away at your return. So that's one thing to consider. Okay, so let's dive into the Schwab Intelligent Portfolios. So when you get started with Schwab, like with many other robo-advisors, it basically asks you a series of questions to basically gauge your risk tolerance. And that just means like, what's your time horizon? How much volatility are you willing to withstand? And sort of what assets you'd like to be invested in. Now, if you're younger, my recommendation would be to go as aggressive as possible. I think a lot of times the way the questions are phrased can be a little bit misleading. I had a friend who sort of answered them more conservatively, and she realized at the end that they had put her into 80% bonds, which just wasn't going to give her much growth. And as we've seen over the past few years, the equity markets have really rallied. And if you had missed out on any of that, you sort of missed out on a lot of your potential gains. So I would say as a pro, number one, it's a very simple setup. They ask you a few questions, but I would say a drawback on the sort of questionnaire part at the beginning of Schwab's assessment is that I don't know that it accurately gauges what you really want to do with your portfolio. So my suggestion is if you are going to start a Schwab Intelligent Portfolio is just to go pretty aggressive. Just say that you want the most aggressive portfolio. One of the big pros with the Intelligent Portfolios is that there is no advisory fee on top of your normal fees. So as I said, most of the robo-advisors charge anywhere between 0.25% to 1% annually on your assets. Schwab's Intelligent Portfolios actually have a 0% advisory fee, which is nice because you're not eating away at your annual performance. The positions that I have are here on this chart. And you can see that they have a relatively diverse portfolio. You can see that there's a heavy sort of emphasis on equities because I put an aggressive portfolio. What's nice is that they give you a lot of different exposure to different types of equities. So you can see that there's small cap equity, international equity, there's REITs, there's international real estate, there's emerging markets, there's large cap. So you're really getting a broad range of assets here. So this is really like a set it and forget it. You can't control sort of what positions they're going to put you in. You sort of just have to say like, I want an aggressive portfolio, and then this is what they're going to put you in. But as you can see here, most of the funds that we're invested in are Schwab funds. So basically, unless Schwab doesn't have a fund that matches the asset class that they want to invest you in, they're going to put you in one of their funds. And so the pros of this is that it's really turnkey, and you can sort of immediately put your money into a diverse portfolio. But I will say that one of the cons is that they place you only in Schwab portfolios. And I did a quick comparison to Vanguard portfolios. You can basically see that the weighted management expenses for the Schwab portfolio are about 3 times as expensive as a Vanguard equivalent fund. So in some ways, you know, the saving the 0.25% on your advisory fee is good. But if you're paying a tenth of a percent more every year too in fees, it's not quite as good as you might imagine. One other really good benefit of the Intelligent Portfolio is that it rebalances to your targets about every 90 days. And you know, it's debatable how often you should rebalance, but anywhere from like every quarter to every year is probably a good amount to rebalance. It does take some amount of work to rebalance your portfolio every year. And if you weren't invested in a Robo-Advisor, you might not do that, or you might forget to do that. So let's go over the investments that they've placed me in. There's about 46% in international markets, about 30% in US large cap, about 20% in US small cap, and then about 7% in cash. A major drawback that I would say about Schwab Intelligent Portfolios is that they hold a high amount of cash. And in this case, it's about 7% of my portfolio, which is very high because cash is really not making much money compared to the equity markets. I will say that the cash program in the Intelligent Portfolio has a decently high interest rate. So I think the rate that's being quoted right now is about 4.5%, which is, you know, is comparable to high yield savings accounts. So while the portion of my portfolio that's allocated to cash is probably higher than I'd like it to be, at least I'm getting like a decent return on that. You know, it's a very straightforward portfolio, and it's not doing anything crazy, but it's giving you a good amount of diversification. Now, looking at sort of the portfolio performance for the last about year, you can see in the chart that, well, you know, the rate of return hasn't been as good as the S&P 500, which is, you know, to be expected. It's actually not a knock on the product. It's just to say that, you know, when you have exposure, when you have a diversified portfolio, it's not going to do as well to the S&P 500 during a time when the S&P 500 is doing extremely well. I mean, over the course of the last year, the S&P 500 is up like almost 30%. So it's really hard to beat those types of returns. And so international equities haven't done as well, but it's still important, I would say, to be in a diverse portfolio in case there's a pullback in the US market. So yeah, you can see the benchmark of the S&P 500 is just much higher than the diversified portfolio, but that's going to be the case across all diversified portfolios. So, you know, overall, I would say that Schwab's Intelligent Portfolios are beneficial to anyone who's just starting out in investing and wants to get a diverse allocation immediately. The pros are that it's very simple. It's very quick to get started and get up and running. I would say another pro of Schwab's Intelligent Portfolios, again, is that there's no additional advisory fee. Another benefit is that it rebalances for you automatically, which a lot of the Robo-Advisors will do. But that's something to keep in mind that if you're going to create your own portfolio, you'll have to rebalance yourself. On the con side, I would say, again, just in review, when they ask you questions about how risky your portfolio will be, it's often hard to determine how accurate that's going to be. So, you know, I generally would say, like, be as aggressive as possible when answering those questions so that it doesn't put you in a lot of bonds. Another con is that it has a high cash allocation, which I don't think is necessary in your investment portfolio. But, you know, at least they're giving you a fairly high yield on that cash. So, you know, in comparison to other Robo-Advisors, I haven't used any. This is really the first Robo-Advisor that I've used. But, you know, there are a few other options ranging from, you know, sort of like 0.15% to 1% to some, there are some places that charge you like fixed amounts. On the whole, if you're looking for, I'll probably give it a try at some point, but if you're looking for low-cost ETFs, I still recommend Vanguard. And setting up a portfolio with Vanguard is not very difficult. If you choose, between 5 and 7 ETFs, you can get enough diversification. But Vanguard also offers an additional Robo-Advisor, and I think it says it's approximately 0.15% each year. So if you're really looking for the simplest solution and you're willing to pay like just a little bit more money, I would argue that Vanguard's digital advisor probably will be one of the best. I'll give it a try and maybe put a review of that later. But definitely you can achieve diversification fairly simple through Vanguard ETFs, and that will keep your expense ratios very low. Some other potential options that I've seen out on the market are Betterment, which a lot of my friends use. SoFi has a free automated investing tool as well, but I haven't used it. I might give that a try and also do a review on that. Wealthfront's another one that a lot of my friends use. Again, both Wealthfront and Betterment both charge 25 basis points or 0.25% per year, which, will just start to eat away at your performance. So I would say in conclusion, try Schwab's Intelligent Portfolio if you're looking for like a turnkey solution, knowing that you might hold a little more cash than you want to, and that the fees on their ETFs are slightly higher than alternatives.